Welcome to Around the Turnbuckle. It's Sunday night. It's 6 o'clock. All of us in this room are weary and almost voiceless because we all have experienced an amazing wrestling weekend in the form of Outbreak and Legends of Hamburg. Unbelievable weekend. Kudos to everybody involved. Kudos to Ryan Vox and Jared and Antonio and me, Mark and Troy and everybody involved in putting that show together. The sound guys, the referees, the boys, the wrestlers. I can't. We could talk for 2 hours about that weekend. That being said, while we were experiencing that weekend, a certain somebody we are all rather familiar with retired. Vincent Kennedy McMahon. And so we decided, and I say we as in me and Keith, and then I invited me, Mark Best, and I invited Jeff Christian. And we decided that we're going to have a discussion and talk about Vince McMahon. And everybody watching is welcome to throw in your comments and your questions for the panel. I will warn you that I screen each and every comment that comes through here. So if you are on here to berate and go nuts and try to raise our ire, because we're not here to do that, I will not air your comment. So keep it nice and friendly, and I'll air everybody's as much as comes my way.
Can I just say something real quick, Al?
Sure.
Piggybacking off what you just said. Folks, this is history. This is the biggest story in professional wrestling perhaps ever. Certainly it's the biggest story since WWE bought WCW. So you know what, guys? Let's respect the history of what's going on here. Let's not be marks. Let's not be assholes. Let's not be shock jocks. Let's not try to, get a rise out of people. We know there's a lot going on. We know there's a complex amount of issues that go into this, but let's respect the moment and let's respect the history of the moment, which is certainly what we're trying to do here. We're not going to kiss anybody's butt. We're not trying to push an agenda. We would like to just cover and make a document that is for the history of this moment. We're asking you to do the same thing.
So for those, thank you very much, Professor. So for those who did not see it, I am going to place up on the screen at this time the tweet heard around the world, which is Vincent McMahon at 77, time for me to retire. Thank you, WWE Universe. Then, now, forever, together. Hashtag WWE. Hashtag thankful. We have comments already before we get started. Big Dave Motorman is here. Good night. Good evening, guys. Greetings, Jeff and Mark. Great talking with you on Inside the Squared Circle, Mark, when you called that show. Kudos to the man who changed the wrestling business forever. Thank you for the entertainment, Vinnie Mac. Chris Vant, my man in South Carolina. What's up, Big Chris? Hello, gentlemen, he says. And the one and only...
What's up?
The one and only Bob Bushman chiming in. Good evening, guys. Gonna miss the man himself. Vince McMahon's last had WrestleMania. I don't know what that means.
I think he's trying to point out the guy that created WrestleMania has now been in Gorilla his last WrestleMania.
There it is. That being said, I thought we would go around the room in counterclockwise order. So we'll start with the professor. Jeff will go next. Mark will go third, and I'll go last. When was the first time, Professor, that you experienced Vince McMahon or even heard his name? Can you recall that?
So I think the first time I would have experienced Vince McMahon, and I would have not even been aware that he was what I was experiencing. Look, we all know the story. I'm not going to detail it again. If you're a long-time watcher of this show, you know. If you're a first-time watcher of this show, well, then I'm going to give you a reason to go back. We all know what's in the background. What's always in the background when I'm on the air. It's that gentleman right there. It's The Undertaker. 1992, the funeral parlor. I had been aware of Andre the Giant because my brother was a wrestling fan before I was. He loved Hulk Hogan. My brother and I have a extraordinary sibling rivalry, let's say, so if he liked it, I would automatically be against it. He likes Hulk Hogan, find me the guy that doesn't like Hulk Hogan. First it's Andre the Giant, so okay, Andre the Giant. Then it's the Ultimate Warrior, and I'm a comic book guy, I'm a superhero guy, so the Ultimate Warrior gets that little extra layer that helps. Ultimate Warrior's on the funeral parlor. I like horror movies. I like the dark things. I like all that stuff. Holy crap, this guy just. I see this weird guy with a squinty eye, and this guy comes out of a coffin. I am hooked. I am very interested in what happens next. And holy crap, he just beat up the Ultimate Warrior and put him in a casket. What is happening? I want to know more about this. I know Vince, I'm pretty sure, had the call on that, so I heard his voice.
He did.
I didn't know who he was. I didn't know anything about him. I just know I was riveted by what I saw on the screen. As I now venture into wrestling, because I see all of this, and I'm like, I would like more of what I just saw. So I turn to my brother and go, how often can I get that? How often does that happen? He tells me. I start watching Superstars of Wrestling. I'm hoping to get my Undertaker fix. And for you younger fans, we couldn't get that every week. Y'all get your favorites every week. We didn't get that then. But I would hear Vince McMahon every week. And he was over the top, and he was forceful, and he was, everything that's happening is so great. And look, I've said a lot of bad things about Vince McMahon, but if you ever heard me on commentary, folks, I think you probably do hear a little bit of that, even if it's unconscious. I'm doing it because that's the first thing I ever heard to push a story. That's when I first heard Vince McMahon.
Classic Johnny Potter said he tunes in right when the professor's talking. Yeah.
I appreciate that, Johnny. We don't always see eye to eye, but deep down.
I think he was saying by coincidence he tuned in and you were talking.
Well, that's possible. That's possible too.
Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, Sonny. What's up, buddy?
Evening, Sonny.
Bob refurbished his statement. Good evening, guys. Vince McMahon will go down as one of the greats. I sat and watched WrestleMania moment this year, and it was amazing. I'm going to miss him. Okay, Jeff Christian, my man. When was the first time you heard the name Vince McMahon or heard his voice, perhaps?
What was the show that WWF had before Monday Night Raw? Was that Primetime Wrestling?
They did Primetime Wrestling, but
it was a Monday night show.
Vince wasn't on. Primetime Wrestling they had, but Vince wasn't on that. He was on Tuesday Night Titans,
right?
Which was kind of like his Johnny Carson type thing.
Okay, I'm going to get there because I was flipping channels one Monday night and Primetime Wrestling come on.
Mm-hmm.
Who are these guys? I remember Bobby Heenan being on that show.
And Gorilla Monsoon.
And Gorilla. I remember Gorilla.
Rest in peace, Gorilla.
And, yeah, rest in peace, Gorilla. And
rest in peace, Bobby Heenan.
Absolutely, rest in peace, Bobby Heenan. Both those guys were amazing.
And Cindy Heenan as well. So much love and respect for Cindy Heenan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jeff.
And I thought, where can I get more, like, what are they talking about? Because they were just really talking for the most part that I remember that segment. And the more they talked about it, it was like, oh, well, you can hear more tomorrow night. Oh, you can hear more tomorrow night? Okay. What time? You know? So Tuesday comes, I put on that channel at that time, and that was my introduction to Vince McMahon. That's how I got into it, and I was like, "Who's this guy?"
Right.
Certainly knows an awful lot about what he's talking about, or maybe I
Right.
just didn't know anything at the
And he
time.
had like
but
Tuesday Night Titans. He had guests on,
Yeah.
to introduce talent on TV. They didn't have to wrestle. They came in like a talk show environment, and they could show their character a little bit. And that was actually the first time that I saw Vince McMahon. The face. I heard his voice long before that.
That was my first intro to Vince. That's how I noticed
Yeah.
him. That's how I remember him.
Me, Mark Mass, same question. When was the first time you heard the name Vince McMahon?
I guess I'm gonna sound like the old guy of the group, but Saturday night's main event, Jesse the Body Ventura, Vince McMahon on commentary. Like, I lived for that. Growing up on a farm, we never had cable, so I got Saturday mornings like Wrestling Challenge or Wrestling Superstars, but
Right.
network Saturday night's main event on at 11:30, till 1. If I was allowed to stay up, if not, I guess what I do, I set the VCR.
Yes.
I'd watch
Yes.
that, and record it, and there, McMahon, Jesse the Body Ventura, Saturday night's main event. I watched them over and over. So, I mean, that was the first, and watching that was hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, where was the damn WWE network when we were kids, right, Mark?
Right, exactly.
Jesus.
We couldn't even conceive of such a thing.
Right, but I'm just saying,
Cable was revolutionary.
because I hear Mark say that, and I did exactly the same thing. I remember recording over like a family event that my mom had used.
Yeah.
Used the camcorder over, and I taped Saturday night's main event over it, and I did it over and over and over again until I wore that tape. Couldn't record on it anymore. Like I kept. I had one of those VCRs where you set the timer for 11, and then I always put it a little late because sometimes it would go past 1 or 1:30 or whatever.
Yep. The one time I learned my lesson, I was recording it, and I remember it sticks out of my head. It was Hogan, and I think, oh my God, who was it? Oh my God! Now I can't think of the name anymore. The Giant, the guy with the handler. Oh my God! I can't think of his name right now. I'm not drawing a blank.
Was it Kamala?
Kamala, yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Kamala.
beautiful. Kimchi with maybe
Kimchi.
Harvey Whippleman.
Yeah, it was Kimchi and the main event, and I didn't have enough tape. I was like, I missed the ending. I was like,
oh.
Because there's no way to rewatch that back then. It was live.
Yep.
It was live and or pre-recorded, but they only aired it once.
It
they
was
never
one and done.
It.
Yeah,
one and done.
Recorded it. I watched it the next day, and I'm like, what happened? I look, I'm like, the tape's all. I'm like, oh my God. So I learned my lesson.
I got a big comment from Big Chris Van. He's like, loved Vince, a legend, made wrestling worth watching, brought in talent, but you guys think The Rock buys WWE? Do we think that The Rock will buy WWE?
No, not even a chance.
I don't think so either. I think
the way the stock works, it works in such a way that any kind of takeover like that is absolutely impossible.
Right. So we'll talk about the future of WWE at the end of this show.
Yeah, we can.
I want to talk about Vince. I want to talk about Vince. Yeah, I want to talk about Vince because when we talk about the future, we're talking about what happens now. So, So my answer to that question is I remember hearing his voice for the first time watching Saturday mornings Superstars of Wrestling, and I watched Saturday morning cartoons first, and then usually Wrestling Challenge was on at 10, I think, and SummerSlam. I mean, Superstars of Wrestling was on at 11.
Yep.
And it was usually him and Jesse on Superstars, and it was Bobby and Gorilla on Wrestling Challenge.
Yes.
And then and then just like Jeff, the first time I actually saw him on it, like his face was Tuesday Night Titans. And then, like Mark, also the Saturday Night's Main Events, of course, you see them. They do the intro where they're standing in front of it. Looks like a green screen behind them, like the crowd, and the crowd's all going crazy. And him and Jesse are talking about what's going to happen that night on Saturday Night's Main Event. And then they would do, of course, they would do the thing. And so, like, Saturday Night's Main Event was almost like, you know, it was almost like Raw before Raw, right? I mean, like every match was like the main event caliber match. They didn't have, you know, they always showcased their top stars on Saturday Night's Main Event, but Wrestling Challenge and Superstars, you would have, you know, a bunch of matches, and then you'd have, you know, back then they had a lot of jobbers. They had all kinds of jobbers. Kind of new.
That's what everyone did. It was a typical wrestling show at that point.
I know. So
I'm just for the fans that don't know, because I mean, we might have some younger audience there. I just want to give them the historical context that Saturday Night's Main Event was really ahead of its time in a lot of ways, because when we say it's Raw before Raw, and I don't mean to cut you off, Alan, I apologize if I am or I'm disrespecting you, but just when we talk about Raw before Raw, what we really mean is Raw before the Attitude Era. Because even when Raw debuted as somewhat the traditional wrestling show, but you would also get a little more action, you'd get a little more language, you'd get a little more of a feel, but they still would do the enhancement talents and the squash matches and the stuff like that. Really, Saturday Night's Main Event was a lot of what you were getting in the Attitude Era or the Nitro Era, the Monday Night Wars era, where you were getting what would be considered top match after top match, kind of what you had to pay for on a pay-per-view or buy a ticket for at the arenas, and you were getting it on free broadcast television, which is such an innovation, and that is a Vince McMahon innovation with Dick Ebersol, to have the Saturday Night's Main Event where you would have these basically free cards that you used to have to pay money for.
Yep.
So, Saturday Night's Main Event also had a lot more storylines going on too. Superstars of Wrestling and Wrestling Challenge focused more on just the matches and just kind of showcasing, you know, the name, the you know, you would, the thing you know, when I look back at those shows, and I was watching some of them earlier with my son, and he goes, well, didn't, when you were watching back then, kind of already know who's going to win? Because when you saw somebody, like when you saw like Hercules taking on Jim Powers, you were like, okay, well, obviously Hercules is going to win this match. Back then, it didn't really matter. Like back then, it was like, okay, well, you know, we don't know much. You know, at the time, like Jim Powers had just split up with Paul Roma, and Hercules was, and Paul Roma kind of got, so he turned on Jim Powers. So Jim Powers did have a reason to wrestle Hercules. But when you saw the match get started, you saw clearly that Hercules was just gonna like destroy this guy. And then there was guys like Barry Horowitz and Iron Mike Sharp, and you know, all these jobbers back in the day that just were there. Dwayne Gill was another one that were there just to be somebody for the talent that Vince was pushing to showcase their talents. They were basically the beat up dummies. But
that's why I don't like the term jobber. I like the term enhancement talent or carpenter, because if you really understand the wrestling business, you know what those guys did to help make those guys look that much better. Because how you take that bump and how you make their big moves look that much bigger is so important.
So let's talk about some of the all-time moments that you can remember, because we all talked about early Vince McMahon. Everybody in this room, you know, remembered the broadcaster. So we can also talk about now, like, at what point did we realize he was the man? What part did we realize that he's the guy behind all this? And he's the guy that's in charge of the talent, in charge of the booking, in charge of all that stuff. This was way before it went public and all that, where it was just where he was, buying out the territories and getting it all together and getting WrestleMania together and when you watch documentaries about this, there's never been a solid documentary just on Vince McMahon's life and career, but he's in a bunch of other ones. If you've ever seen any of the Hulk Hogan ones, he's in that a lot. Like, Hulk Hogan usually speaks very highly of him. Like, there was him and Hogan. He's parading Hogan all around the world, trying to get more fans, get more people interested in wrestling. And I've seen a lot of people on social media in the past couple of days since this broke, saying a similar thing, that this man made non-wrestling fans wrestling fans. Like, he took people who didn't know a damn thing about wrestling, or maybe didn't want to know, or but he turned them. He showed them something. He created characters. He created events. He created a lot of what we take for granted today. And when we talk about the indies, when we talk about going to these local wrestling shows, when we talk about wrestling in general, we all got into wrestling because of the stuff that man created. He created the character The Undertaker. You talked about The Undertaker earlier. He gave that. Nobody else could have pulled that off other than Mark Calloway. But but he had that ready. He had storyboards and he had a whole story behind it. Like, he did that. Now, of course,
I would argue that's part of why Mark Calloway never jumped, because he knew if he jumped, he couldn't have The Undertaker. The Undertaker would be gone. The Undertaker is probably one of the most perfect instances of saying the promoter, Vince McMahon, came up with the character and believed in it and made it and molded it, and he got the right performer in it. It's the perfect marriage of the creator with the performer. I've never seen a more perfect marriage than when you talk about The Undertaker, which is really a different show, but I just want to point that out as a way to put over, how much Vince matters and how much you can't discount. When he was on, man, he was fucking brilliant.
So I'm going to let Jeff and Mark answer this question. Chris Vance says, Vince wrestled in a ton of matches. What is your favorite? Jeff?
I don't know that I have one, to be honest. I'm just thinking back. Like, I think I don't know that I would say match-wise, but I think my favorite storyline was Vince and Stone Cold.
Right.
Yeah.
Matches, I mean, it was hard for me to buy into the fact that Vince was going to put himself into a situation that, wasn't a winnable situation for him
right.
in some way, shape, or form. So I never really got that invested in the matches themselves, but rather the storyline of it was more important to me. And I think if I had to go through one, it's definitely got to be everything that he's done with Steve Austin.
Absolutely, I agree with that. But I remember one where there was like a McMahon in every corner. Do you remember that?
WrestleMania 2000.
It's WrestleMania 2000, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that to me was the match itself wasn't all that. It was good, but it wasn't all that. But that storyline of each of McMahon was in each corner. It always intrigued me. I always remember that one. But as far as his matches go, like you said, Jeff, it's hard to pick one. You usually lean towards the rivalries he had or who he pissed off the most or whatever. But I did like his match with Ric Flair. And I kind of got into his match at WrestleMania 19 with Hogan, just because of the history between those two guys. But me, Mark, same question for you. What was What was your favorite Vince McMahon match or moment or rivalry? Or
Uh, I mean, like Vince never had to be the wrestler, the worker.
yeah,
You know, he was the boss, so he could get away with not being able to get in there a lot of stuff. But yeah, he is I believe the story like with Austin. I watched something not too long ago online, just bits and pieces, and um the WCW thing with Austin. You know, before like the whole going into it, like WCW ate out everybody, you know, and Austin's here to save WWF, WWE, and like, did he want to help Vince? No, because of the rivalry, but you know what? He did it for the company. So I was like, moments like that they create is just, and Vince had a lot of them, a lot of stuff that he did. He just, but yeah, I mean, Austin too, all this, every time you watch Raw, what was Vince and Austin going to do? What was going to happen? The ministry, they take Stephanie. Austin's going to save her. Like, why? He hates Vince. Why would he just let it? But no, he's the gentleman. I'll go save her.
right. I remember that.
Just like, it's the stories that pull you in. So, Vince, so well, but it doesn't matter. If he can piss you off, he's done, but the story definitely is, so.
Yeah. So Jim Ross, I believe, no, I think it was Paul Heyman. I don't want to misquote that. I think Paul Heyman once said Vince McMahon is and was WWE's greatest face and greatest heel.
Mm-hmm. Greatest heel I'll give. I don't know about greatest face. And I rarely disagree with Paul, but
because I remember him saying that. And what he meant by that is like, if he's Mr. McMahon and he's, the heel, Mr. McMahon, we all know, was birthed out of the Montreal Screwjob. That character, Mr. McMahon, I'm saying.
Birthed out of the Montreal Screwjob, but he did have a dry run with that in Memphis. When they were sort of, it never quite made WWE TV. They flirted with it. It didn't quite go there, but it was sort of a proto-invasion angle, because invasion angles always work, right? I mean, Mark and Jeff can probably attest to that. An invasion angle will always work. But when WWE would do an invasion angle, because if you were the invader coming to WWE, Vince always had a problem letting you look equal or stronger than. But if you were to go down to the other promotion, Vince didn't have that problem. And in Memphis, Vince really cut his teeth with the Mr. McMahon character, where he didn't work, he didn't wrestle, he didn't do anything. But they would do vignettes where he would be in the boardroom, and they would do the whole thing of like, ha, I'm the millionaire that is going to screw over all your local favorites and all your local heroes.
So what was your favorite McMahon moment or match or rivalry, like that you got excited about, maybe, or because we asked everybody else?
Yeah, rivalry was definitely Stone Cold. Favorite match is the St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
In the cage?
Because that was so perfect, right? We're waiting for Stone Cold to finally get his hands on Vince. We know Vince is not a wrestler. We know Vince is not a worker. We know that if Steve Austin can finally get his hands on Vince McMahon, and he can get his hands on Vince McMahon in a way that Vince McMahon can't weasel out of it, Steve Austin is going to beat the ever-loving piss out of him for however long he wants to beat the ever-loving piss out of him, right? And look, I know Alan this is true of. I don't know about everybody else in the room. It's definitely true of me and Alan. If you got a wrestling video game at the height of the Attitude Era, or maybe a little after, you cannot tell me that you didn't create a match where you put your perfect stipulation on Stone Cold Steve Austin and Vince McMahon, and you just went to town as Stone Cold Steve Austin on Vince McMahon. That cage match, that was Vince really at the height of being comfortable with himself and saying, I understand who I am. I'm Wile E. Coyote. The Roadrunner has me. The Roadrunner has me in a way that it perfectly lets the Roadrunner do whatever the Roadrunner wants. I mean, he took bumps in that match that I don't think he ever took again.
Yeah.
Off of the cage, onto the cage, this, that, the other thing, because he understood. Finally, Austin has me. My job here is to let Austin beat me like just a scalded dog, as JR would say. Just beat the crap out of me, and this is the ultimate culmination of our storyline. And I love the fact too that it's one of those pay-per-views they never ever used the name again. They never
Right.
went to it again. It exists as only that one because the point of that event was finally, finally, Stone Cold Steve Austin gets his hands on Vince McMahon, and nobody can do anything about it until it is over.
Was that the debut of the Big Show too?
And it was the debut of
Yeah.
the Big Show. I think that was the only really false note in the whole thing. But I understand why they did it that way because let's face it, a match where basically you have people being asked to say, hey, pay us full price on pay-per-view for a match where you know damn well there is no way that you don't know who the winner is because the other guy is really even less than an enhancement talent from a wrestling ability perspective. They had to feel like, well, we've got to give you something at the finish just in case you weren't buying into. No, I'm just happy for Steve Austin to stunner him for 3 hours if that's what you want to give me.
And then he threw him through the cage, and Austin fell down, and he won the match.
Yeah, I mean that's a. I don't know about anybody else. Does anybody else feel like that was kind of a false note to what you wanted from that show?
You know, at the time, it was exciting just because I had never seen a cage match end that way. You always see him climb up and over, or in the old days with that, disgusting, crazy blue thing they used to use.
That was Hogan's fault.
Or you could escape through the door. That was the first time I ever seen somebody literally chuck through the cage, and it was perfect. It perfectly opened wide open, and Austin's standing there holding on, and then he's like, he lets go, and because he knows if he does that, he wins.
I think it was kind of one of them deals where, Vince, the story of, right, Austin finally gets his hands on Vince, but Vince has the backup plan because he knows if he's got something waiting for Austin. Here comes shows like, throw. And it backfires because Vince was hoping that, I can win this with the Big Show. And the cage, and Austin wins anyway, and he goes, damn it. Like, I should have had Big Show should have killed him, but he threw him through the cage instead. So I think the story, like you said, it was finally Austin beat out of him, but Vince is like, but I'm going to prevail because I got somebody that's going to destroy you, and it blew up in his face. Kind of like the Wile E. Coyote, like, I got him. Boom.
If only I hadn't bought my stuff from Acme.
Right?
Acme screwed me again.
Yep.
So then there was that moment that we all talk about, and Keith and I have talked about a million times on this show, as both the intriguing moment, but as also a let's just say, wrong turn moment in the world of professional wrestling. Keith alluded to it earlier. The purchase of WCW.
Yeah.
It was like Keith talked about that this moment that's happening now, where Vince McMahon is retiring, is just as a monumental thing of happening
I
in
think it's
wrestling
bigger. I think it's bigger.
as
But it's the big.
2001 was, because it completely changed the business.
Yep.
Everything changed. The
And
Monday
we
Night
had no
Wars,
idea what was
were
going
over
to
and
go
all that.
forward.
But that's a moment that every wrestling fan's going to remember. Anyone that was born before 2001, I'm saying, that they're going to remember that, because you go and you watch. We all were engaged in the Monday Night Wars, and then once it's over, and you have Shane McMahon on Nitro at the same time that Vince is on Raw, and you're like, whoa, and then at the time it was a crazy moment for any wrestling fan. But now that we look back on it, we kind of have a different perspective on how it changed the business, right, Professor?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, I know younger fans, your son, my nephew, Al,
Yeah, right.
has no reference point for that. He has come into it after that. You and I lived it, Mark lived it, Jeff lived it. And we didn't know what was going to happen post WCW being bought by WWE. I mean, we had our speculations, and we knew ECW was ailing, so we knew ECW was probably not going to continue to be that alternative company. I think we all sat there saying at the time, though, Paul Heyman wasn't going to sell, that ECW was done. But I think we all sat there going, holy shit, Vince McMahon now owns the wrestling business, basically.
Right.
One person owns the wrestling business. This is probably not a good thing, but we don't know that for sure. And now what we're looking at now is the one person that has owned the wrestling business, and no disrespect to anybody that's running that isn't WWE. I think if in their heart of hearts they'd admit, for the last 20 years or so, for the most part, it's been the Vince McMahon show, it's been the WWE show, and now we don't know what that show is going to look like post Vince McMahon. We have our speculations, we have our ideas. Obviously, we're going to go to that a little later on, but it's that same sort of hope slash fear slash we don't know, and we're all speculating, and we're all going to probably look back at this show and other people that are doing hot takes and everything else, and we're going to look back at it later, and we're going to either go, man, that those people knew what they were talking about, or that person knew what they were talking about, or we're going to go, that person was a complete idiot. Why the hell did they even think for 30 seconds that was the way it was going to go? I mean, it's history. It's history in the making. And we're all kind of feeling our way through it.
And really, Vince, the purchase of WCW fell into his lap.
Oh, absolutely.
He wasn't supposed to. He wasn't buying it.
Oh, God, no.
Early on, talks that he was, and he said nope, he's not interested.
Nope.
It
Didn't
went
like the
to
price.
Then the Japanese company was talking about taking it over, and all of a sudden, like, things just weren't working, and then it got to where nobody wanted it.
Yep, because Jamie Kellner canceled the television. Bischoff almost had it. To the point that every magazine, shoot or work at that time, was saying it's going to be Eric Bischoff and Eric Bischoff's group, and Bischoff was giving interviews like he owned it and saying, this is what I'm going to do and this is how it's going to be. And then all of a sudden, Jamie Kellner, who was the head of TNT and TBS at the time, doesn't like wrestling, says, we don't need that. We don't want that on our network. Everything WCW is canceled off of both networks. And all of a sudden, Vince McMahon can swoop in and says, I'll give you $3 million for the whole thing. And Brad Siegel had ties to, I believe it was Kevin Dunn at the time, who was friends with Kevin Dunn, who was the head of WWE's production. And really, there's a theme when you look at the history of Vince McMahon. Lucky breaks, monetarily or just having the right person at the right place at the right time, says, yeah, I'll take $3 million for that. And Vince McMahon has made probably the best deal, not just in the history of wrestling. I gotta think that's one of the best deals in the history of entertainment, period, because he got everything WCW for $3 million, and he probably made that back the first time he did any kind of compilation DVD with WCW footage on it.
Yeah. Jeff, are you falling asleep there, pal?
No, I'm good. I'm paying attention to everything, man. I'm exhausted.
I'm just making sure you're okay, bud. That's all.
I'm good. I'm good.
We're all tired, but we're trying to get it together for history here.
All right, so we'll start with me and Mark. What happens now? All right, Vince McMahon retires. So, in your opinion, what happens to WWE, NXT? What happens to it all now?
Nothing. Okay, so Vince retires.
Yep.
Okay. 2 co-CEOs.
Sure.
And Steph and in Nick Khan. Triple H is now reinstated as the executive vice president of talent again.
Correct.
The one thing that everybody forgets is said this or it was posted online. He is still the majority stock owner of WWE. What happens to people that retire? Okay, they can just do whatever they want. Who says that he just still isn't there just to help out because, hey, I'm retired now. I don't have to be here, but I want to be here. He's still backstage. He's still, hey, I think, he's still giving ideas. He's still doing. I mean, you really think unless like for some reason a lawyer said you need to go far, far away from that, I still think he's going to have his hand in the pot. He's going to talk through Steph, and I believe, I just don't see him walking away, especially because he's the majority stock owner.
Right.
So that means he's going to have an input on what happens. So just because you retire, you're no longer CEO, okay? But you're a stock owner, and I don't like what's going on. So I think you ought to change it. What do you know what I'm saying? Like, and then the whole thing. Did you see what happened? The whole thing. If Vince went, Brock said he quit.
Yes.
And then they come back on. He was back on SmackDown. Then that night, like, I think honestly, I think it's just to get eyes, behind the scenes with everything that was going on with Vince. But I think if he was something really serious, I think he'd relinquish the stocks and get from everything. Until that happens, I don't think a lot's going to change. I really don't. A lot of people think they will now because Steph and Nick are doing that, Vince ain't going to walk away without that fight,
Right.
Like, so unless there's a lawyer saying, look, there's a lot going on. You need to get away from that, which none of us know. It's all speculation. People have their own opinions on what's going to. I don't think there's going to be a lot. Granted, with Triple H coming back with, being a VP of talent, could NXT get better? Sure. Back to what he was doing. Is he work? Now, here's the thing. We don't know who is running NXT. Pritchard, granted, he had shoulder surgery, but, John Vince is retiring. Pritchard's out with a surgery. Who's now running it? I mean, I'm sure there's somebody that's there that's running it, but who? Is it Triple H? No. Sean's probably writing and doing a lot of it, but I
Yeah.
doubt if it's Shawn himself. Now, I'm sure there's somebody there that's, Bruce was there. Now granted, maybe Bruce armchairing it from at home or whenever he can finally get back on the road again.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's help there somewhere. Again,
Yeah,
we all don't know, but
All right,
there's
I got a
lots of-
couple. I got a couple of comments to get in. Chris Vant says Vince on the live, "You're fired." To a wrestler was awesome. He involved himself more than these other wrestling owners.
well, maybe today. I don't know about.
And then Anthony, we saw you at Legends of Hamburg. We saw you at Quarantine. He was at Quarantine. He was the guy that won the free your free tickets. Mark.
Yep.
We actually got to meet him outside, so that was pretty cool. Good to see you there, bud. Good to see you. Thanks for tuning in today. Jeff, same question. I want your take on what happens now. It's your opinion because Mark was purely giving his opinion.
Mark beat me to it.
He said nothing really.
Yeah, I want to take a step back. Mark, I know you were in the building when that tweet was first posted. Al, you may or may not have been there.
I was there.
Have you ever heard so many people at one time go, "What, Vince?"
It was insane.
Right? I mean, I wasn't on my phone. I wasn't looking. And when I heard people talking, "Yo, did y'all see what Vince just tweeted?" I had to look it up myself. I was like, oh, okay. Well, I was talking to my dad this morning about it. And he said to me, Vince still is the primary shareholder, right? Do you really think he's walking away? And I said, actually, I didn't know that he still had all those shares. Now that I do, no, he ain't walking away. So just same reasons Mark said, nothing's really going to change. Nothing's really going to change.
Eyes on the prize, just like in AEW with Tony Khan and MJF. I don't want to be here. Everybody's not going to happen. Same thing here. If he's retiring, what's going to happen? More eyes on the prize. I think it's publicity stunt.
When Brock said, I had a friend of mine message me and said, Brock said he's walking away, that if Vince isn't here, he's not here. And I went, that's a work. Like, come on. How can you sit there and go, Brock's got a world title match against Roman Reigns in like 2 weeks, right?
Right.
Why walk away? Why would you walk away from that? I know Brock doesn't need the money, right? Brock doesn't need the publicity. He doesn't really need to do the match. But I think every one of us sitting here knows how thick wrestling runs in Brock's blood, right? Why would he walk away from it? And to me, like Mark said, it's just more eyes on the prize. Vince stepping down as CEO. Hey, we can work this into an angle. We got SmackDown tonight right after Vince announces this. Okay. I mean, it to me, just made sense. Like, people are going to watch and behind the scenes, nothing's going to change.
All right, that's 2 nothings. Professor, do you agree with those two guys?
I do, and I don't, respectfully.
Okay, go ahead.
So, when I first heard about this, I was sitting in the audience at the Hamburg Fieldhouse, which I think is a weird synchronicity, right? Considering how much the Fieldhouse has meant to WWE over the course of its history. So, I immediately go to PW Insider, which we know is a great and reputable source of wrestling information. There's a lot to unpack in all of this. I do think you can't discount that Vince McMahon still owns 87% of the stock.
Right.
There is no way that while he is alive and he owns 87% of that stock, that anybody is going to do any kind of big moves. For instance, Stephanie McMahon fired Bruce Pritchard that second time. Vince brought him back. I don't think Stephanie fires him again.
Right.
Even though she's chairwoman and CEO and all of that, her father's still alive and still has 87% of that stock. She's not going to fire him while that is the case. I know that both Triple H and Stephanie McMahon do not like Kevin Dunn. This is said by everyone. They don't like Kevin Dunn. They hate Kevin Dunn. The minute that Vince is no longer anywhere near the levers of power, Kevin Dunn needs to get the fuck out of that company and figure out what Plan B is, because they hate Kevin Dunn that much. Kevin Dunn is still going to be there for the foreseeable future. Now, I've also heard that Vince McMahon, when he did the SmackDown promo, we all remember the SmackDown promo, right? He came out and he had some glad handing and some good times, and he did the quote about, together forever, all of
Right.
that. I was told he went back to Gorilla, he flipped the microphone, and he said, fuck him. They are still investigating Vince McMahon, not just at the WWE level, but the Wall Street Journal is still investigating him.
Right.
They're still investigating him at every major news outlet. The state of New York has changed the criminal laws for the statute of limitations. We know some of the allegations that are against Vince McMahon. Some of them are criminal, and the statute of limitations on those criminal allegations just changed. I do not believe that Vince McMahon made this announcement without talking to Jerry McDevitt, his lawyer, and that Jerry said, Vince, you got to fucking step down permanently right now because something's coming. I found out what's coming. It's going to be bad. It's going to be really fucking bad. It's going to be a very bad storm. I'm not the only one that feels this way. I know some folks that I talk to that are nowhere close to the wrestling industry right now. They just pay attention to the news and they're like, yeah, I agree with you. Something more, I think, is coming. This is speculation. I don't know anything. I don't have any sources that are saying that. I think something worse is coming, and this is a publicity move. I do agree with that. I don't think it's a stunt. I think it's a publicity move because if Vince McMahon were only temporarily away from his roles and this came out, everybody would want his fucking blood. So I think the idea is to get him out, get him retired, get the sympathy going so that when this hits, people are going to be a little more like, oh, don't attack a retired guy. He's 77. This is so far in the past. Why are you doing this? Just my thoughts, personally.
And right, and you're right. We don't know what's going to happen. Now, did anybody watch the show with Vince? You guys see that? Listen to it at all?
Which one?
Pat McAfee.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I didn't see that one
I
personally.
did. Yes.
So if you listen to Vince, he said on there, he goes, I have aligned myself with very smart people.
Right.
Okay.
Mhm.
So he, and he's done this over the years. So I think that you're right. If there is something bad happen, get him to retire. That way, you're right. They're not gonna ask for his retirement. He's gonna be retired. I mean, how bad? Right. They're still after him about it. I mean, the thing is, it's funny. Like all these accusations come out, and now all of a sudden we haven't heard anything in a while. So is his lawyer kind of like Nixon thing as they go and try everything down they can, and hopefully just little stuff comes through. We don't know, but
Yeah.
Vince has around him that are very smart. They know, and Vince, if you watch that video, he's not a big guy on negative stuff. He doesn't
Right.
listen to it. He doesn't listen to it. He doesn't, and he just continues to move forward. So, and that's why he lets, I guess, the around him do what they need to do for him, and he's built that wall. You know, will it crumble ever? I don't know. I don't think anybody ever knows that. You know, a lot of it's going to depend on what comes out of these accusations. Can they get him for anything? Is what's criminal? If they is he
Right.
getting this?
Yeah.
Could there be jail? You know, nobody knows that. But I mean, I still think that the retirement is just going to help, kind of like, what does that say? Kind of like the sleight of hand, like incriminated. Oh, he retired. Oh, you know, SummerSlam's coming up, so they're taking the mind off of that. Now the story not on his accusations is what they want. So the
Yeah.
retirement is a big, kind of like that wall going, hey, he's retiring. What's going to happen to WWE now? What's going to happen at SummerSlam? What's going to happen after? They kind of got their mind off the accusation stuff and hoping that they can bury that enough to hopefully it's just whatever comes minimal damage.
Yeah, because I mean, everything right now is financial crimes. It's stuff that if he retires and he's not on the board anymore of WWE, even if you can say, oh, he misused company funds or any of that stuff, it's like, well, yeah, that sucks. He was a bad man for doing that, but the bad man is gone. The bad man can't do that again because he's retired. I think his problem and his possible exposure, and again, I'm speculating, I'm only putting things together based on what I know from history and from listening to, and I'll source it, listening to Jim Cornette's podcast where he was on with a lawyer with Stephen P. New, and Stephen P. New said New York has changed their sexual assault laws. We know that there is a rape allegation against Vince. It's an old rape allegation. It's Rita Chatterton from the 80s, and she repeated it in 92 on Donahue. But New York changed the law in such a way that if she feels like she's got something prosecutable, which is going to be hard, especially because we're talking about, I think she's alleging an incident in 85 or 86. She mentioned it again in 92. Now she'd be trying to press charges in 2022. Almost all of that evidence is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. But she does, under the law, theoretically have the ability to press that case if she wants to.
Right.
Realistically, if she just throws the dirt of saying, I'm going to press the case, she probably doesn't have something that can do criminal prosecution, and that's not me saying she's lying or anything like that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying in a criminal prosecution you need to do beyond a reasonable doubt. You're going to need physical evidence, you're going to need all that stuff, and in a sickening situation, and that is a sickening situation to me, in a sickening situation like that, if you're saying it happened in 85, 86, and you're trying to do the prosecution in 2022, all of that physical evidence is probably gone. You cannot prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. You're going to, at that point, probably be trying to do something civil. But right now, everything we know that's on the table, and I know I'm really dancing a line here, getting us in trouble, so that's why I'm trying to lawyer it up as much as I can of saying, this is only me, I'm speculating, all of that. You're really, something bad I feel like is coming, whether it's that, whether it's something else. But right now, like you say, Mark, everything that's out there and that's on the table right now, it's all stuff that you can mitigate by saying, but he's retired. He's not here anymore. He made bad decisions when he was here, but now he's not here anymore. How far do you want to go on a guy that made decisions at a corporate level that is no longer at the corporate level? Didn't we take care of it by him voluntarily walking away? But like you say, he can voluntarily walk away, but by the nature of how he set up the stock, he can make a phone call anytime he wants, and that phone call is going to mean something.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I got some comments to get in. Anthony Bialy said both nights were fun, hot, but fun, in reference to when we mentioned the Legends of Hamburg earlier.
Yeah.
And Outbreak shows, Quarantine show Friday night and Outbreak show on Saturday night. Chris Vance says, it's time for change. As a diehard wrestling fan, I don't watch as much anymore. I'm tired of watching the same guys wrestle each other anymore. And it is too predictable, no surprises. Before matches start, you already know who's going to win. Title reigns lasting too long. He also says, I love the Attitude Era. That put WWE on the map.
I'm with him except for the last sentence and also the Attitude Era part because that neglects Rock and Wrestling. Rock and Wrestling put them on the map. The Attitude Era was a revitalization, and yes, it took Rock and Wrestling that much further because the public offering was off the Attitude Era, and when they pay the dividend on the stock, which is a lot of the reason why a lot of people will buy the stock, that dividend is coming out of the Attitude Era war chest. So I will not dispute that the Attitude Era was the most profitable thing for the company, but the company was already on the map before that. You can't get the Attitude Era without Hogan and the Rock and Wrestling Era.
Yeah, very true.
All right,
I know we can't ask him anymore, but how does Bruno Sammartino feel about title reigns lasting too long?
Exactly.
To me, with a title reign, if you've got a guy, and Roman Reigns is a great candidate for this, the way he's just been a dominant champion, you built that up. The title reign lasts that long because he's such a dominant force. And because he's such a dominant force, his title reign lasts that long. I know I reversed them, but they mean slightly different things, right?
Yeah.
So I don't have a problem with it. I personally disliked hey, this person's a champion because they won at the pay-per-view on Sunday and they lost the belt the next Monday Night Raw.
Right.
But hey, they gained it back on Friday. You know, that was too much to me. I wanted to see guys that, you know, were going to be long-term champions. So title reigns lasting longer, to me, I'm down for it. I like it. It's got an air of history to it for me.
And to me, I always go the end on that, and how fucking over is the guy that beats Roman going to be if the right fucking guy is put in that situation,
Bingo.
beats Roman, and you go with him.
That was my point.
Just
I apologize, Al.
Mark, you were going to say something?
The only thing I was going to say on that was there is a change coming. Eventually, Vince isn't going to live forever. You know, eventually the stockholders, he's going to have to relinquish shit. And it is, you know, so there's a change going to be coming. He will no longer be around. Starts, you know, could it be now? Maybe. You know, could it be later? Sure. It's definitely coming. The only thing I will say is if you want, and Vince has tried this, and the trouble is, and AEW is kind of a fault for it too, you want new talent. You want different things. When they bring guys in, they don't like them. They don't get over. The crowd doesn't care for them. And so if you put a title on them, not drawing any money. It's still a business. Everybody doesn't like Theory. You know, all like, oh my God, he's different. He's fresh. He's new. He's young. Nobody likes him. And I guarantee you, they put a title on him. Holy crap, the internet's going to implode. Why would you put the title on him? Oh my God. But you want change. So I'm giving you change, but you hate it.
Right.
You know, it's like either you're going to embrace the change, or it's so frustrating.
Right.
You know, like what do you do? You know.
Well, what do you do is what we've been doing, which is if you don't like the product, don't watch.
Exactly. Right.
You know, and go find your wrestling fix where Keith and I have found it, and it's locally because these guys are young and they're hungry and they're fun to watch and they put on a great show. And my father and my stepmother were in the audience for the quarantine show on Friday, and they do not like wrestling at all, and they had a great time. And
And if you,
and they and yeah, they were there to watch me ring announce, but they actually were talking about the matches and which match was their favorite and stuff, and that's amazing. All right, that's kudos to you guys for putting on that show, but also for the fact that if 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 you're wondering whether or not you should go check out these local shows in your neighborhood, we're spoiled in PA. Go check them out. You know, the worst case scenario is you're like, it's not for me, so you never go back. But I guarantee you, you might find one or more than one that you go back to again and again and again, and you get into it more than WWE. You don't have to watch Raw and SmackDown every damn week. I couldn't tell you the last time I watched an entire episode of either one of those shows. And then Dynamite, I gave Dynamite about a year, where I religiously watched it for a year when they first rolled out Dynamite. Now it's like, well, I'll watch Dynamite's opening segment, because at the bottom of your screen they usually go through the entire card. They tell you exactly who's wrestling tonight. And then the next day I'll just go back and watch the match, one match or two that I actually want to watch. But other than that, there's things on Dynamite I don't like either. But the last thing we're past the hour now. The last thing I want us all to say is, Vince, finish the fill in the blank. I guess we'll start with Mark. Vince McMahon's legacy is, like, what he'll be most remembered for. Vince McMahon's legacy is,
I don't think I can just say one thing.
mm-hmm.
I think his legacy is forever. That's golden, it will be memorable forever. I think it's one of the things like Vince in 20 years from now and 30 years from now, people will be talking about what Vince did. I think his legacy lasts forever. You know, I think, you know, he's put such a big mark on the wrestling business. He paved the way for so many, whether you liked him, whether you hate him, you didn't like his choices. It has to be respected.
Yeah.
You know, because without him, would there be wrestling? Sure, there would be. Would it be like it is today? No, probably not. But, you know, 31 years ago, when I first started training to wrestle, like, no internet, none of that, you know, so it was, you know, back then, like, you know, the times have changed so much, but legacy will last forever. It's, you know, one of them that nobody will ever forget. It's golden because it's like that trophy that you can sit there and go, I remember that. I will always remember that because of everything that he has ever given. Whether, again, you liked him or you didn't. It's something that
I love that.
Remember forever.
I love that answer. So his legacy will last forever. Jeff, Christian, same question.
I think Vince McMahon's legacy is taking professional wrestling mainstream.
Okay.
And the reason that I say that is, when I was growing up, I was a wrestling fan.
Mm-hmm.
I got made fun of all the time in school. You're one of those wrestling fans. You're one of those wrestling fans. A year later, everybody's wearing wrestling shirts. You know, and they're like, "Hey Jeff, did you see what happened on?" And I'm like, "Uh-huh." Did you see what happened 3 years ago when they did that? Yeah. Yeah. You know? So yeah, that's what I got. Taking it mainstream, making it mainstream so that a wrestling geek like me isn't considered an outsider anymore. And I think part two of another part of his legacy is the four of us getting together talking about him. You know,
I love that answer.
Part of his legacy exists as us as fans talking about wrestling every week.
Yeah.
So I know it's like a
Professor?
3-part answer, but yeah.
True.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Professor?
I mean, obviously, I echo what Mark and Jeff said because, I mean, they just spit truth. If I could step back for a minute and y'all bear with me, I'm going to be a little verbose, but on point. I am a giant comic book fan as well as a wrestling fan. And I know there's a synchronicity in that.
Sometimes.
When we talk about DC Comics, for instance, which I'm a big fan of, I know you are too, Al. We're both Batman guys. DC talks about pre-crisis and post-crisis. We can talk about very definitive eras for DC. I feel like the wrestling business is going to be able to, right now, as well as in the future, we're going to talk about pre-Vince, which is the territory era. We've all agreed that's what we need to call it. It's the NWA, it's the territories, and the Pioneer era before that. And now we have been able to stamp a third era, which is the Vince McMahon WWF WWE era. Just to throw out a term, I know we're all going to debate that, and then probably in 5-10 years we're going to decide what it is ultimately called.
Right.
And where I bring up comics is when you talk about pre-crisis, post-crisis, every decision that DC has made since 1986, when Crisis on Infinite Earths happened, you can really say it came out of that. Something happened that is so definitive and so integral to a company and to a medium and to a business that everything is going to be judged against that everything is going to go back and ultimately reference to that. And everybody who is any kind of amateur historian or fan or whatever have you is going to look at that. And we are there. We are in that moment. We're already talking about Vince McMahon. We're talking about the good. We're talking about the bad. There's going to be books that are going to come out. There are going to be documentaries that are going to come out. There is going to be a cottage industry dedicated to analyzing everything Vince McMahon ever did, on top of the cottage industry that already exists for analyzing everything that Vince McMahon ever did. Vince McMahon set out, and he said in interviews when he took over the WWF, I want to be the Walt Disney of wrestling. Now, you can argue whether or not he impacted his business the way Walt Disney did, or he impacted pop culture the way Walt Disney has done. I would say he has done that, because we're still debating Walt Disney, for better or worse. We're going to continue 50 years, 60 years to debate Vince McMahon, for better or worse. That's why I say this is a historical moment that we're living in right now, not just for wrestling, but for popular culture and for history itself. We are going to continue to debate this guy because he's been so covered, because he's been so out there, and because he's been so influential. We are going to continue to look at this from every angle possible for however long, good, bad, indifferent. This is going to be something that we're going to come back to forever and ever. We could be old and gray, and we're going to be able to put a panel together if we need to and go, we got nothing else this week. Hey, why don't we do Vince McMahon at, however long? That'll get us a show, right? That'll get us some views, right? I mean, that's where we are. We've got something that is so big. I don't think we're ever going to be able to truly wrap our arms around it and have the final word on it.
Yeah.
My answer to that question is WrestleMania. Because WrestleMania was his vision. WrestleMania, what WrestleMania has become every damn year is basically, a lot of people call it this, even if you're rather a wrestling fan or not, the Super Bowl of wrestling. And so
It is.
Basically what, a lot of times it brings in wrestling fans and, casual fans alike to the same place. They try to move it around, but it's up to the highest bidder, right? Like whoever can get there, because it brings a lot of business into that town and it brings a lot of everything.
Mhm.
And every wrestling fan, even if you don't like the current WWE booking and current WWE programming, you watch WrestleMania. We all do it. We all watch WrestleMania.
Yeah.
And as long as WrestleMania exists, you can't talk about WrestleMania without talking about Vince McMahon. So when WrestleMania 50, which most likely he might not make it to, because that's in a little over 10 years from now. I don't know. Maybe he'll live to be 100. I don't know. But what I mean is, at WrestleMania 50, you'll still bring up Vince McMahon.
Yep.
They'll say, well, Vince McMahon had this thing in WrestleMania 1 and Madison Square Garden, and from that, each and every year, if you don't talk about Vince McMahon for the rest of the damn year, WrestleMania weekend, you'll talk about Vince McMahon. And like Keith said, there's a million reasons to talk about Vince McMahon. We could do different shows on different aspects. Like he said, if we don't have a guest, we can all get together again and we can talk about a different aspect of Vince McMahon or whatever you want. From now to the end of time, like Keith said, he's always going to be in every wrestling fan's minds and hearts. He's always going to be there, whether you love him, whether you hate him, whatever. You have to respect what he did for this business.
Yep.
And WrestleMania was a huge part of that. He created that huge event that sells tickets every damn year, no matter what the card. It used to be sold on the main event, but necessarily, like, they usually do try to add a little bit to it to try to get more people to come, but it seems like nowadays the event itself sells itself before you even know. I remember ticket sales for WrestleMania used to be in November. Do you guys know that ticket sales for next year's WrestleMania went on sale this month?
Yep.
We're talking July.
Yeah.
None of us know what's going to be on that card. There's speculation, there's rumors, yada yada yada, but we don't know who won. We don't know. We don't even know who won the Royal Rumble, or we don't know all that stuff. All we know is WrestleMania next year, where is in LA, and so do you want to buy tickets to WrestleMania? They opened up sales for WrestleMania in July. I could be wrong in saying this, but I think it's the earliest that they've ever done that.
Could I interject something that helps your point out, if you please? So if I said to you guys right now, hey guys, the Super Bowl is within driving distance of you. You have to buy the tickets right now. You don't know what teams are going to play. We haven't even had NFL preseason right now. So you have no idea if your team is going to the Super Bowl. But it's within driving distance, and you've got to buy a ticket right now, even if it's nosebleed. So just to say you were there, would you buy the ticket?
Depending on the price.
Okay, but I'm saying let's go with nosebleed. Let's go in with just the cheapest. You could say you were there. Would you buy the ticket?
I would, yes.
That's what WrestleMania is now.
Right.
It is in that league of the Super Bowl, of the World Series, of the thing that you could say to a man on the street. Just say the name.
Yeah.
They know what it is.
Yeah.
They know what it signifies, and there are people out there, and I was one of them that has it on their bucket list to say that they went to one, that they were there for one of them, even if it's the worst one, even if it's the most blowout shitty game or it's the most blowout shitty event.
Right.
You want to be able to at least say when you're on your deathbed, I don't regret that. I got there, I went there, I did it. The end.
Jeff and Mark,
Which absolutely goes back to what Alan was saying.
Mm-hmm.
well, because that's why I was saying it. Jeff and Mark, Jeff and Mark. Have you guys been to WrestleManias? Because I know Keith has. No, neither one of you have been to WrestleMania.
Nope.
All right, so I've been to 3. I went to WrestleMania 15 in Philadelphia. I went to WrestleMania 17 in Houston, Texas, and I went to WrestleMania 29 with Keith.
Yeah, I was there
at MetLife Stadium.
We didn't go together, but we
were there.
Quite as close as we were then, but we did meet up. We did link up.
Right. So, I urge you, if at all possible, to put that on your bucket list to attend a WrestleMania, because the atmosphere there live, we get all excited for it at home, but the atmosphere there live, no matter what the card, it's so amazing. You feel everything. You feel every moment, every move. They always try to go all out. It's the big show, So, I mean, I urge you to go. Hopefully it comes nearby where you guys could do that, because it's an amazing feeling to be part of that event. Bob Bushman, our good friend Bob Bushman. I talked to him on my Big Alboski Raw podcast, and he said that he's been this year will be his 11th WrestleMania. I envy that man. I really do. I don't know how he's doing it, but I don't know what he does for a living. But he's going to LA. He's already bought his tickets.
Oh.
He's going to WrestleMania 39 because the rumor is Roman and The Rock, but we don't know that. So it's not it's not a definite thing. But we could talk about that on another show. But
yeah.
I appreciate all you guys' answers and your candidness and everything like that. And as far as Vince goes, I think we all agree, no matter what we think the legacy is or no matter what we think of the man, we all agree that, as Jeff said very eloquently, the 4 of us would not be sitting in here talking about wrestling if it wasn't for Vince McMahon.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not that you'd want to say it, but it's going to be true. There's going to be more events that we will be talking about Vince, whether it's the allegations or anything that develops, and eventually when he finally passes on, that will be the day that wrestling probably stops to honor him, and that alone we will probably be talking about that. Yep. And the influences and this and everything. So they're coming. It's just a matter of when. But like you said, you could talk about Vince all the time because so much there. Look at this stuff. And I believe on the network eventually. I mean, I'm sure they're gonna put something up with Vince. His life story, his history. I wouldn't know why they. I think a lot of people would love to see from start to what now, just to see, him, the changes from back when he first thought about it, and all the troubles that he had, like the back, behind the scenes where you just like, wow, like that stuff.
I would love if A&E did. I would love if A&E did one of their biographies, with WWE's blessing and help.
Yeah.
Like they've done The Undertaker and whatnot. I would love them to do one on Vince at this point.
Yeah,
because it'd be the ratings would be through the roof. Do we agree on that at least?
Oh my God, absolutely. Yeah.
So, All right. Chris Vant gets the last comment. We're going to get out of here. Chris Vant says, never been to WrestleMania, but I was at a Seahawks-Broncos Super Bowl. There you go, Keith. In my club seats at MetLife. Best experience I've ever had. I bet. Super Bowl. That was an exciting Super Bowl, Seahawks and Broncos. Yeah. So, well, Chris, man, we ought to maybe we all should get together and go to WrestleMania 40. It's a monumental one. I don't even know where it is yet. But
hopefully they're going to bring it around here.
It'd be nice to be on the East Coast, right?
Yeah, not for nothing. I know they don't want to do a big event like that in MSG anymore, but you know what? MetLife Stadium
MetLife,
isn't
bring it
that
to
far
MetLife.
from MSG.
Chris, if they bring WrestleMania to MetLife, will you go? All right, so guys, I appreciate the entire, the hour and a half now that we've talked about Vince. I mean, we could talk about, I know you guys could talk about him all day. And I appreciate you guys.
And I'm sure this isn't the last time we'll talk about it.
Probably not. And I appreciate you guys coming on today. Keith and I did have a guest lined up in the form of Greg the Mechanic Manuel. We talked to him last night at the Quakertown show, and he will be on here. If anybody was wondering where Greg the Mechanic Manuel was today, he will be on here on another day. He had a family function to attend, and I never begrudge anybody if they have family comes first. If they're booked wrestling, me and Keith don't care. We always reschedule you.
And he was offering us options. It just didn't work out,
Yeah. So Greg, if you're watching this, brother, Greg, if you're watching this, I hope you're having a good time, and we'll see you down the road. We'll get that done. We want to revisit. He was on about a year ago. So where he was in 2021 versus where he is in 2022, it's going to be a great conversation. So I can't wait to have that. Keith and I will be back here next Sunday at 6 p.m. with Rose Gold, Cody Rose.
Looking forward to that one.
You do not want to miss that, guys. That is going to be a fun interview. I guarantee it. Cody is very excited. I've talked to him. I talked to him yesterday, and I've also talked to him, just texting back and forth. I also want to take this opportunity to thank Mean Mark Mest and everybody else involved for helping me do what I did on Friday night. I had the time of my life. I haven't stopped talking about it. I've been driving my family crazy talking about it. But luckily, my wife and kids took a trip to the shore for the next 3 days. So I'm kind of here alone. Well, not exactly alone. My son's here, but so they don't have to hear it anymore. I've been getting messages and messages and messages from family who see my Facebook posts about what I did on Friday. So, and Jeff, I hope you were kind on commentary.
He was doing heel, though. He told me. We talked on Friday. He was doing the heel run.
Can you guys hear Jeff? Because I can't hear him at all.
I don't hear him.
Yeah, I don't hear him at all. Yeah, there you are.
There we go. Okay.
All right.
What did you say?
I didn't say anything bad about you, even though I was working, doing a little more heel work than normal. You'd have been proud of me, Al. So, no, I didn't. Had nothing bad to say about you. I think you did a great job, man.
I appreciate it, and I loved seeing you at Legends of Hamburg too. You look like you were having a good time and getting lots of autographs and.
Pictures, making memories. Yeah, it was a great time, man.
Oh, always a good time, man.
I might not remember some of those memories after making that one that I did, but
there's a story there for after the show, I think.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that afterwards.
Yeah, you know what? Let's get off the air then. Let's get off the air. I want to hear this. Let's get off the air. So, guys, Chris Vance says yes, Keith. He's in. If WrestleMania comes back to MetLife, he's in.
Good.
There you go. All right. That gives him a reason to come up here and hang out because he is a Jersey boy. He's from Peaburg.
Let me just say one thing if I could before we go.
Mm-hmm.
About the weekend. So I want to thank Mark and Jeff for having me out on Friday for doing what they do. It's amazing. Jeff, I know you put me over a little bit when we talked on Friday. You said you were going to do a Professor Keith impression on your commentary. You don't know what that meant to me. Because I look at you and I go, here's a guy that's way more professional than I am. So even if you were just joking around to put my name in your mouth like that,
It's not a
it
joke,
means the
man. I'm
world
not
to
joking
me.
around.
I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that. I cannot tell the fans in Quakertown, you know who you are. Last night, Al was up there. He got the chance to speak on a very special moment, and thankfully, he recognized me. He put me over as well on that, and the fans, your reaction to me was so beyond what I can describe. And I meant it when I bowed to you instead of, because it's not about me, it's about you and it's about the talent. If you guys love what I'm doing, that that's everything right there. Because I just want to give something back, and I appreciate both you and Mark, Jeff, for how supportive you've been of us. There are not words in my vocabulary to speak on how much that means. I know I'm sure Al feels the exact same way. We're never going to
Mark, you
be
hear
able to.
that?
Yeah, we're
We've got
never
the
going to be able to
professor
tell you.
speechless.
Yeah,
Right?
you're
He
never.
doesn't have the word.
I
Right?
don't.
God, hold on, let me write this down. What's the date here is? uh, but
I love you guys. I love how accepting you guys have been to just somebody that, like Jeff said, being the wrestling guy before the Attitude Era, being the kid that has to take the rocks for loving this shit. Nobody was in it. To be able to find the people that are right there with you, and it's everything.
and I've said this multiple times, and I'll continue to say it. Like whether I'm training somebody or fans coming up and wanting to talk, it's about moments, making moments. Mark Merrow talks a lot about that in his stuff. I watch some of his stuff. It's
Yeah.
making those special moments that you can relive over and over. It is about living. It is about life, but it's about moments. Legends was a moment. You guys go down to WWA, it's a moment. When
Was.
you go to a bigger place, it's a moment where you can look out back and go, the memories that I can remember of all this. You
Yep.
the more you make, the better it'll be for you can tell people, your kids, grandkids, whoever that's willing to listen, wrestling fans that you may never have finally met and they're talking wrestling. You're like, oh, I remember this and I did this. That conversation, it's wrestling. As long
Yeah.
as people get it, you can talk all day. And I just believe that, and I said it today about wrestling. If you love wrestling, you should never ever put it down. You should not destroy another company, whether it's a wrestling company or it's just for like a convention.
Right.
You shouldn't tear down anything that you love. It
Yep.
only hurts. So, you spread love, help somebody out, because whether they help you out or not is irrelevant, but doing that because you want to see it succeed. To meet them fans that are so passionate that they want to get involved, like you guys do, you know. And then Alan, you told me about how you wanted the ring announced. I said, you know what, I can probably make that happen, and I did,
You
you
did.
know. And the thing is, it's like that's my moment, Legends was great, the shows were great, but when I can see you going out there ring announcing, watching from backstage in Gorilla going, man, he is living this up, and
And
I can
show
see
Mhm.
just
and
how
full disclosure, the first thing I did when the show was over was I came in the back and I hugged you.
yep, because
Damn right you did.
because, that moment will last forever, and I just believe that the more that we can do, the better life will be, the better, and I just say we just need to create more so we can talk more about it. you know.
Awesome.
So dreams are possible; they can come true.
They can come true, and because of people like yourself, there needs to be more people like yourself.
I've heard more.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna end this show, guys, with the fact that today, on July the 24th, would have been my grandmother's 88th birthday. So I want to say a happy heavenly birthday to my grandmother, who was one of the biggest wrestling fans that I knew. Her favorite wrestler was Coco Beware. I didn't get a chance to meet Coco because he didn't come to Legends of Hamburg, but maybe someday I'll get to do that. But I just wanted to say happy birthday to her because she's the one who got me into wrestling when I was a kid in the first place. So happy birthday, Nanny. And Keith and I, like I said earlier, we'll see each other next, or we'll see you guys next Sunday with Cody Rose. But this Saturday, 3WA has an event in Schuylkill Haven, Bushholds Auction House. Keith and I will be there as well. If you guys want to come out, if you're in the area, Schuylkill Haven's not as far from out. If you're in the Allentown area, Palmerton, Lee Heighton area, you're around this area where I live.
No excuse.
Schuylkill Haven's 30 minutes down the road, guys. It's right here. It's at your grasp. Come hang out and come watch wrestling.
I'm in Jersey. It's an extra drive for me to go to Schuylkill Haven. I'm going to do it. So if I'm going to make the extra drive, I expect all of you to make the extra drive too. That's the challenge right there.
Thus says the professor. All right.
Thus says the professor.
For the professor, for the one and only Jeff Christian, for the one and only Mean Mark Mest, I am the Big Al Boski. This was Around the Turnbuckle. Vince McMahon retires. And we'll see you guys next time on Around the Turnbuckle.
You think you know me?
Oh, yeah. If you smile.